The transport ship Meridian's Hope shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace, its hull scarred from countless battles across the galaxy. Among the 200 survivors aboard, 15-year-old Maya Chen sat in the cramped medical bay, her dark eyes fixed on the viewport showing Earth's blue marble growing larger by the hour. The other passengers whispered about her, pointing when they thought she wasn't looking. The girl who survived the Kepler 442b massacre, the only human to escape the Vorthak death camps alive. What they didn't know was that Maya had done more than just survive. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the ship's chief medical officer, approached with a tablet in hand. Maya, we need to go over your debriefing one more time before we reach Earth. The Colonial Defense Authority will want a full report. Maya nodded without turning from the window. Her small frame, barely 5 feet tall, seemed fragile in the oversized refugee clothing. Dark circles under her eyes spoke of sleepless nights, and her hands never stopped moving, fingers tracing patterns that looked like nervous habits but were actually muscle memory from weapons training the aliens had never seen coming. I've told you everything, Dr. Martinez. The Vorthak invaded our colony. They killed everyone except the children they took for experiments. I was in the camps for 18 months before the rescue ships found me. Her voice was steady, practiced. She'd rehearsed this story 100 times during the journey home. Dr. Martinez sat down beside her, studying the girl's profile. Something about Maya's account had always bothered her, but she couldn't put her finger on what. The rescue teams had found the teenager alone in the ruins of a Vorthak research facility, surrounded by dozens of dead alien soldiers. The official report blamed a reactor explosion, but the evidence suggested something far more violent had occurred. Maya, the scars on your arms, the medical scans show they're not from experiments. They're from combat training, advanced combat training. The girl's reflection in the viewport smiled, but it wasn't the smile of a traumatized refugee. It was the smile of a predator remembering a successful hunt. The Vorthak made a mistake, Doctor. They thought humans were just another weak species to be cataloged and dissected. They never bothered to study our history. Maya finally turned to face the doctor, and for a moment Dr. Martinez saw something that made her blood run cold. The eyes looking back at her weren't those of a frightened child. They belonged to someone who had seen the worst the galaxy could offer, and had not just endured it, but conquered it. What really happened on Kepler 442b, Maya? The teenager stood and walked to the small mirror mounted on the wall. She touched her reflection, remembering another face that had looked back at her 18 months ago. A softer face, an innocent face that had believed the universe was fundamentally fair, and that good people were protected by cosmic justice. They took 43 children from our colony, ages 6 to 16. They wanted to study human neural development, see how our brains responded to various stimuli. Pain, fear, desperation. Maya's voice remained conversational, as if discussing the weather. They started with the youngest ones first. Little Tommy Nakamura was 7. They made the rest of us watch. Dr. Martinez felt sick, but she forced herself to listen. The official reports had been sanitized, stripped of details that might upset Earth's population. But she was beginning to realize that the real story was far darker and far more dangerous than anyone suspected. The Vorthak scientists were fascinated by human adaptability. They'd conquered 17 species before us, and everyone had broken under their methods within days. But humans kept surprising them. We kept finding ways to survive, to resist, to fight back even when it seemed impossible. Maya turned back to the window, watching Earth grow larger. Somewhere down there, her parents were waiting, assuming they would be reuniting with the same girl who had left for the colony 3 years ago. They had no idea that their daughter had died in those camps, and someone else entirely had taken her place. After 6 months, they realized we weren't just surviving their experiments. We were learning from them, adapting, getting stronger, so they changed their approach. Instead of trying to break us, they decided to see how far they could push human evolution under extreme stress. The doctor's tablet slipped from her hands. Evolution. They gave us access to their weapon training facilities, not as a kindness but as another experiment. They wanted to see if humans under extreme duress would turn on each other or band together. They expected us to create a hierarchy, fight among ourselves for resources, prove that human cooperation was just a thin veneer over animal selfishness. Maya's laugh was soft and utterly without humor. They were so focused on their hypothesis that they never considered a third option. They never imagined that we might cooperate specifically to kill them. Through the viewport, Earth's moon was now visible, a pale crescent against the star field. Maya had dreamed of this moment for months, but not in the way her rescuers assumed. She wasn't dreaming of safety or comfort or therapy sessions to help her process her trauma. She was dreaming of recruitment centers and military academies and the look on humanity's enemies' faces when they realized what they had accidentally created. The other children. What happened to them? We made a pact, the 37 of us who were left after the first year. We would all survive or none of us would. The Vorthak thought they were conditioning us to be better soldiers. What they actually did was teach 43 human children how to wage war against an enemy with superior technology, superior numbers, and no concept of human determination. Dr. Martinez was beginning to understand why the rescue teams had found so many dead Vorthak in that facility. You escaped. No, Doctor. We didn't escape. Escape implies running away from something. What we did was eliminate a threat to our species. Every scientist, every guard, every administrator in that facility, we made sure none of them would ever hurt another human child. The transport ship's intercom crackled to life. All passengers prepare for atmospheric entry. We'll be landing at Geneva Spaceport in 2 hours. Welcome home. Maya smiled again, and this time Dr. Martinez saw exactly what the Vorthak had created in their arrogance. Not a victim. Not a survivor. They had taken human children and, through unimaginable cruelty, forged them into something the galaxy had never seen before. They had created humanity's first true warriors in a universe that was about to learn why Earth species had never needed to be conquered. They had always been the ones doing the conquering. Geneva Spaceport buzzed with activity as the Meridian's Hope touched down on landing pad 7. News crews pressed against the security barriers, their cameras focused on the arrival ramp where Earth's lost children would finally come home. Maya Chen walked down the ramp with the other survivors, her small duffel bag containing everything she owned in the universe. To the cameras, she looked like exactly what everyone expected, a traumatized refugee in need of protection and healing. Her parents, Lee and Jennifer Chen, pushed through the crowd of families, tears streaming down their faces. Maya saw them coming and felt something twist in her chest. These people had raised the girl she used to be, loved her, sacrificed for her education and dreams. They deserved to know what had happened to their daughter, but they also deserved to live in a universe where such knowledge wasn't necessary. Maya. Oh, sweetheart. Jennifer Chen crushed her daughter in a hug that smelled like home-baked bread and lavender soap. Lee wrapped his arms around both of them, his shoulders shaking with relief. Maya hugged them back, letting herself feel genuinely happy for the first time in 18 months. These people were real. This love was real. Everything else could wait. We never gave up hope, Lee whispered into her hair. Never. We knew you'd come back to us. Maya closed her eyes and allowed herself this moment of peace. Tomorrow she would begin the work of preparing humanity for what was coming. Tonight, she could be their daughter again, even if it was just an act of kindness. The reunion was interrupted by a woman in a crisp military uniform approaching their group. Colonel Patricia Williams of the Colonial Defense Authority wore the expression of someone accustomed to delivering bad news. Excuse me, Mr. and Mrs. Chen. I'm Colonel Williams. I need to speak with Maya about her experiences. Standard debriefing protocol for all returning refugees. Maya studied the colonel's face, reading micro-expressions that most 15-year-olds would never notice. Williams wasn't here for a standard debriefing. She was here because someone had read the real reports from the rescue mission and started asking uncomfortable questions. Can't this wait? Jennifer Chen stepped protectively in front of her daughter. She's been through enough. She needs time to heal. I understand your concern, Mrs. Chen, but Maya's information could be vital for protecting other human colonies. The Vorthak threat is still active in 17 star systems. Maya gently touched her mother's arm. It's okay, Mom. I want to help if I can. She looked directly at Colonel Williams, and the older woman felt a chill run down her spine. There was something unsettling about the teenager's gaze, as if she was the one conducting the evaluation rather than being evaluated. An hour later, Maya sat in a sterile interrogation room in the spaceport's security wing. Colonel Williams had brought a team of specialists, a xenobiologist, a military strategist, and a child psychologist who kept stealing glances at Maya's file with increasing concern. Let's start with the facility where you were held, Colonel Williams began. activating a holographic display. Our scouts photographed the ruins before evacuation. Can you help us understand what happened here? The hologram showed the Vorthak research complex as the rescue teams had found it. Blast craters riddled the compound. Bodies of alien soldiers lay scattered in defensive positions. Their advanced energy weapons still clutched in their claws. Whoever had attacked this facility had done so with tactical precision and overwhelming force. Maya leaned back in her chair, studying the display with professional interest. The Vorthak made several critical errors in their compound design. They relied too heavily on perimeter defenses and didn't account for threats originating from within the facility. Dr. James Harrison, the military strategist, leaned forward. That's a rather sophisticated analysis for someone who was supposedly a prisoner there. I had 18 months to study their security protocols. Dr. Harrison, when you're planning an escape, you notice things. Escape? Maya, the damage patterns suggest this was an assault by a well-trained military unit with heavy weapons. Where would prisoners acquire that kind of firepower? Maya smiled, and the child psychologist, Dr. Elena Vasquez, made a note on her tablet. The girl's affect was completely wrong. Trauma survivors didn't smile when discussing their captivity. They certainly didn't analyze military tactics with the casual expertise of a special forces operator. The Vorthak were studying human adaptability, correct? They wanted to see how we responded to stress, to training, to combat scenarios. They gave us access to their weapons ranges, their tactical simulators, their combat training facilities. They thought they were conditioning us to be better test subjects. Colonel Williams felt the pieces clicking into place. They trained you. They tried to train us. What they actually did was give 43 human children access to alien military technology and 18 months to figure out how to use it against them. The xenobiologist, Dr. Sarah Kim, pulled up files on her tablet. According to our intelligence, the Vorthak have conquered 17 species using identical methods. Their psychological conditioning techniques have never failed before. That's because they'd never encountered humans before. Maya stood and walked to the holographic display, pointing to specific areas of the facility. Every species they'd previously conquered was either hive-minded or had rigid social hierarchies. They expected us to fragment under pressure, to compete for resources, to establish dominance patterns they could manipulate. She manipulated the hologram, zooming in on the central laboratory complex. Instead, we did something that apparently doesn't exist anywhere else in their experience. We formed a pack, not a hierarchy, not a hive mind, but a cooperative hunting group where every member was both leader and follower depending on the situation. Dr. Vasquez set down her tablet. Maya, how old were you when this started? 13. And you're telling us that you and the other children developed advanced military tactics while being held prisoner by an alien species? Maya turned to face the panel, and for a moment, they all saw exactly what Dr. Martinez had seen on the transport ship. The person looking back at them wasn't a child. She was a soldier who had been forged in circumstances that no human being should have survived. Dr. Vasquez, let me ask you a question. What do you know about human military history? The psychologist blinked at the sudden shift. I'm not a military historian. Humans have been waging war for 10,000 years. We've fought with sticks and stones, with swords and shields, with gunpowder and steel, with atomic weapons and energy shields. Every generation has found new ways to kill its enemies more efficiently than the generation before. Maya began pacing, her movements precise and controlled. The Vorthak looked at us and saw a young species that had barely achieved interstellar travel. They saw our technology and assumed we were primitive. What they failed to understand is that our technology isn't what makes us dangerous, Colonel. Williams was beginning to realize that this debriefing was going to require a complete revision of humanity's defensive strategies. What makes us dangerous? Our creativity, our adaptability, our absolute refusal to accept defeat. Maya stopped pacing and looked directly at each member of the panel in turn. The Vorthak have been conquering species for thousands of years using the same methods because those methods always work. They break their prisoners psychologically, then rebuild them as compliant subjects. She smiled again, and this time Colonel Williams understood why her own hands were shaking. They never encountered a species that gets stronger when it's broken. They never fought an enemy that uses pain as a teaching tool instead of a control mechanism. Dr. Kim consulted her files again. Our intelligence suggests the Vorthak are planning a major offensive against human space. Their fleet movements indicate they're massing for an invasion of the core worlds. Good, Maya said simply. The room fell silent. Good? Dr. Vasquez echoed. Maya walked back to her chair but didn't sit down. Instead, she placed her hands on the table and leaned forward like a predator sizing up prey. Colonel Williams, how many human children do you think the Vorthak have captured from colonies across the frontier? The colonel checked her files. Intelligence estimates suggest several hundred, possibly more. And how many of those children do you think received the same training I did? Colonel Williams felt her blood turn to ice. You're saying there are more like you? I'm saying the Vorthak have been accidentally creating an army of human soldiers with 18 months of intensive alien military training and a very personal reason to see their species extinct. Maya's smile widened. When they invade human space, they're going to discover that some of their prisoners escaped, and those prisoners have been very busy sharing what they learned. 3 weeks after her return to Earth, Maya Chen stood in the recruitment office of the Terran Defense Academy, watching young men and women barely older than herself fill out applications for military service. They moved with the eager uncertainty of civilians who had never seen real combat, their forms asking questions about educational background and physical fitness scores as if war was something you could prepare for with standardized tests. Lieutenant Sarah Morrison, the recruitment officer, reviewed Maya's application with growing confusion. Miss Chen, according to your file, you're 15 years old and have no formal military training. The Academy typically requires applicants to be 18 with either ROTC experience or prior service. Maya had spent 3 weeks learning to act like a normal teenager again. She'd attended family dinners, gone to therapy sessions that focused on trauma recovery, and smiled at neighbors who told her how brave she was for surviving such a terrible ordeal. The performance was exhausting but necessary. Earth wasn't ready for the truth about what she and the other children had become. I'm willing to wait until I'm 18, Lieutenant Morrison. I'd like to submit my application for early consideration. The recruitment officer glanced at Maya's psychological evaluation, which painted the picture of a resilient but traumatized refugee in need of structure and purpose. What it didn't mention were the nightmares that weren't about being tortured, but about the tactical mistakes they could have avoided during their escape. It didn't mention that Maya had memorized the schematics of every Vorthak weapon system and could field strip their energy rifles blindfolded. Miss Chen, I have to ask, are you sure military service is the right path for someone with your background? There are other ways to serve humanity that might be less. Lieutenant Morrison searched for the right word. Triggering? Maya suggested helpfully. I was going to say intense. You've been through enough trauma for one lifetime. Maya looked around the recruitment office, taking in the posters showing happy soldiers defending peaceful colonies, the promotional videos depicting space battles as clean, heroic affairs where good always triumphed over evil. These people had no idea what was coming. The Vorthak didn't fight clean, heroic battles. They fought wars of extermination where mercy was a weakness to be exploited, and victory meant the complete erasure of enemy culture. Lieutenant Morrison, what do you know about the Vorthak military doctrine? The question caught the officer off guard. I'm sorry? The Vorthak. The aliens who held me prisoner for 18 months. What has Earth's military learned about how they fight? Lieutenant Morrison consulted her computer terminal. According to our intelligence briefs, they use overwhelming force combined with psychological warfare. They're technologically superior but prefer to break enemy morale before engaging in direct combat. Maya nodded thoughtfully. That's partially correct. What your intelligence briefs don't mention is that the Vorthak have never encountered an enemy that couldn't be psychologically broken. Their entire military strategy is based on the assumption that all species will surrender once they realize the futility of resistance. Miss Chen, how could you possibly know that? You were a prisoner, not a military observer. Because they told us. Maya's voice remained conversational, but Lieutenant Morrison noticed that several other applicants had stopped filling out their forms to listen. The Vorthak scientists were very proud of their conquest record. They liked to explain their methods to us, show us how they'd defeated other species, demonstrate why resistance was pointless. Maya walked to one of the promotional posters showing a human fleet in formation. They conquered the Zalari by targeting their queen caste and triggering a complete social collapse. They defeated the Threnodi by destroying their homeworld's ecosystem and forcing surrender to prevent extinction. They broke the Kasari by capturing their children and threatening to execute them unless their parents submitted. Lieutenant Morrison was beginning to realize that this conversation had moved far beyond a simple recruitment interview. What are you saying? I'm saying that Earth's military is preparing to fight an enemy they don't understand, using strategies that have already failed 17 times. Maya turned back to face the recruitment officer, and for a moment, Lieutenant Morrison saw the same unsettling intensity that Colonel Williams had noticed during the debriefing. The Vorthak don't expect humans to fight back effectively because no one ever has before. But that's good news, right? If they're overconfident, we might have an advantage. Maya smiled, and Lieutenant Morrison felt a chill that had nothing to do with the office air conditioning. That depends on what you consider good news. The Vorthak are planning to invade human space within the next 6 months. Their advanced scouts have already identified the core worlds as primary targets. They're bringing a fleet of over 3,000 ships carrying enough firepower to sterilize entire planets. How could you possibly know that? Because I helped plan their invasion strategy. The recruitment office fell completely silent. Every applicant, every officer, every civilian employee stopped what they were doing and stared at the teenage girl who had just admitted to treason. Maya continued as if she'd commented on the weather. The Vorthak scientists wanted to test human strategic thinking under extreme stress. They gave us access to their tactical databases and asked us to develop theoretical invasion plans for human space. They thought it was another experiment. We thought it was intelligence gathering. Lieutenant Morrison's hand moved instinctively toward her sidearm. Miss Chen, I think you need to come with me. Why? I haven't done anything wrong. The Vorthak invasion plan we developed for them has several critical flaws that make it vulnerable to specific countermeasures. I'm here to help Earth's military exploit those flaws. You helped aliens plan an invasion of your own species. No, Lieutenant Morrison. I helped aliens plan an invasion that I knew could be defeated by the species that raised me. Maya's smile widened. The plan we gave them assumes human forces will respond predictably to conventional tactics. It assumes we'll try to defend fixed positions, protect civilian populations, and follow standard rules of engagement. She walked to the recruitment desk and picked up a stylus, beginning to sketch on the back of her application form. The Vorthak fleet will approach the Sol system in 3 primary formations. They'll expect our defensive forces to mass around Earth and Mars, creating a traditional battle line that they can outflank and destroy. Her sketch showed ship formations and tactical movements with a precision that made Lieutenant Morrison's head spin. Instead, human forces should abandon the outer colonies completely, draw the Vorthak fleet into the asteroid belt, and use mining charges to create a debris field that negates their numerical advantage. Miss Chen, stop. This conversation is way above my clearance level. I know. That's why I need you to contact Colonel Williams at the Colonial Defense Authority and tell her that Maya Chen is ready to begin Phase 2. Lieutenant Morrison stared at the teenager. Phase 2 of what? Phase 2 of the plan we really developed while the Vorthak thought they were training us to be better prisoners. Maya set down the stylus and looked around the recruitment office one more time. Lieutenant Morrison, those 43 children who were captured from human colonies. We didn't just learn how to fight the Vorthak. We learned how to think like them, how to predict their strategies, how to exploit their weaknesses. She walked toward the exit, then paused at the door. The Vorthak created the perfect human weapons by accident. We've had 18 months to plan their destruction, and now we're home where we can put those plans into action. But you're just children. Maya turned back one final time, and Lieutenant Morrison saw something in her eyes that made her understand why ancient humans had once ruled their planet through nothing but determination and sharp sticks. No, Lieutenant Morrison. We were children when they took us. What we are now is something the galaxy has never seen before. What's that? Humans who learned how to wage war from a species that thought they were superior to us. Maya's final smile was full of predatory anticipation. The Vorthak are about to discover why that was the worst mistake they could possibly have made. The door closed behind her, leaving Lieutenant Morrison staring at the tactical sketch Maya had drawn. Even with her limited military training, she could see that the plan was brilliant, ruthless, and absolutely terrifying in its implications. She reached for her communications console to contact Colonel Williams, but stopped when she realized that Maya had left her application form on the desk. Under the section asking for previous military experience, the teenager had written just 5 words: trained by humanity's enemies. Colonel Patricia Williams sat in the secure conference room deep beneath Geneva's Colonial Defense Headquarters, staring at a holographic display that showed the most terrifying thing she'd ever seen. A 15-year-old girl calmly explaining how to commit genocide. Maya Chen stood at the front of the room, using a laser pointer to highlight tactical positions on a three-dimensional map of human space. Around the table sat Earth's top military commanders, xenobiologists, and strategic analysts, all watching with expressions ranging from fascination to horror as the teenager outlined Operation Prometheus. The Vorthak invasion force will consist of 3 primary fleets, Maya continued, her voice carrying the casual authority of someone briefing subordinates. Fleet Alpha will target the core worlds, Fleet Beta will secure the industrial systems, and Fleet Gamma will establish forward operating bases in the outer colonies. Admiral Chen Morrison, no relation despite the shared surname, leaned forward in his chair. Miss Chen, these tactical projections are incredibly detailed. How can you be certain of their accuracy? Maya touched a control on the holographic display, and the view zoomed in on the Proxima Centauri system. Because Admiral Morrison, the other children and I spent 6 months helping the Vorthak plan this invasion. They thought they were testing our strategic thinking abilities. We were actually gathering intelligence. General Sarah Kim, Earth's highest-ranking military officer, studied the tactical display with growing unease. You're telling us that alien scientists gave captured human children access to classified military information? They gave us access to everything, General Kim. Fleet compositions, weapon specifications, communication protocols, command structures. The Vorthak don't understand the concept of operational security because they've never faced an enemy capable of using such information against them. Maya manipulated the display again, showing ship movements and supply lines stretching across dozens of star systems. Every species they've conquered before was either too primitive to understand advanced tactics or too specialized to adapt beyond their evolutionary programming. Humans are the first species they've encountered that can learn any skill set, given sufficient motivation. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the child psychologist who had evaluated Maya weeks earlier, spoke from her position at the back of the room. Miss Chen, the level of strategic thinking you're demonstrating suggests cognitive development far beyond your chronological age. Are you certain you haven't been subjected to some form of mental enhancement? Maya's expression remained neutral, but Colonel Williams caught a flicker of something darker in the teenager's eyes. Dr. Vasquez, 18 months of survival under conditions that would have killed most adults, tends to accelerate cognitive development. When your life depends on understanding alien psychology and military doctrine, you learn quickly. Admiral Morrison consulted his tablet. According to our intelligence, the Vorthak conquest fleet numbers over 3,000 ships. Even with perfect tactical knowledge, human forces are outnumbered 20-1. Numbers are irrelevant when your enemy's tactics are predictable, Maya replied. She touched another control, and the display showed a detailed breakdown of Vorthak fleet organization. The Vorthak rely on overwhelming force because they've never needed to develop sophisticated strategies. Their standard battle plan is to mass their ships, destroy enemy resistance through superior firepower, then land occupation forces. General Kim leaned back in her chair. That's actually a sound military doctrine when you have technological superiority. It's a sound doctrine when fighting enemies who think like you do, Maya corrected. The Vorthak assume their opponents will try to match them ship for ship, fleet for fleet. They expect humans to gather our forces into large formations that can be targeted and destroyed efficiently. Maya walked around the table, making eye contact with each officer in turn. But humans don't fight like the Vorthak. We don't fight like any species the Vorthak have encountered before. We fight like humans. What does that mean? Colonel Williams asked. It means we cheat. Maya's smile was sharp enough to cut steel. The Vorthak conquest of 17 species has followed the same pattern every time. They arrive in overwhelming force. The enemy attempts to defend their homeworld. The battle is decided by superior technology and numbers. Clean, efficient, predictable. She returned to the holographic display and began manipulating fleet positions. Human military history is full of examples where a technologically inferior force defeated a superior enemy through tactics the enemy never anticipated. Thermopylae, Cannae, Agincourt, Guernica, each battle demonstrated that numbers and technology mean nothing when your enemy refuses to fight the way you expect them to, Admiral. Morrison was beginning to understand the implications. You're suggesting we abandon conventional fleet tactics entirely. I'm suggesting we fight a war the Vorthak have never seen before. They expect us to defend our worlds. Instead, we evacuate them. They expect us to mass our fleets for decisive battles. Instead, we fragment into small units that can strike anywhere along their supply lines. Maya touched the display again, and the tactical projection showed human ships scattered throughout Vorthak-controlled space, like antibodies attacking an infection. The Vorthak have never fought a species capable of long-term strategic thinking, combined with short-term tactical flexibility. They've certainly never fought a species willing to sacrifice territory to gain strategic advantage. General Kim was studying the projection with professional interest. This is basically asymmetric warfare on an interstellar scale. Exactly. The Vorthak conquest model requires them to hold territory while processing new populations for integration into their empire. But they can't hold territory if their supply lines are constantly under attack by forces they can't predict or counter. Dr. Vasquez raised her hand like a student asking a question. Miss Chen, you're describing a strategy that would require the evacuation of billions of people from dozens of worlds. The logistics alone would be staggering. Maya turned to face the psychologist, and for a moment her teenage mask slipped completely. What looked back at Dr. Vasquez was something that had seen entire populations exterminated and had made peace with the mathematics of survival. Dr. Vasquez, the Vorthak Standard Conquest Protocol involves the systematic execution of 90% of a planet's population within the first year of occupation. The remaining 10% are kept alive as a labor force until they're no longer useful. The room fell silent. Evacuation saves everyone. Traditional defensive strategies save no one. Maya's voice remained steady, but Colonel Williams noticed that her hands had clenched into fists. The choice isn't between convenience and inconvenience. It's between life and extinction. Admiral Morrison cleared his throat. Miss Chen, assuming we accept your strategic assessment, how do you propose we coordinate this kind of operation? The level of inter-system communication and resource management required would be unprecedented. Maya smiled, and this time it was the smile of someone about to reveal their ace in the hole. That's where the other children come in, Admiral Morrison. Other children? The Vorthak didn't just capture 43 children from Kepler 442b. They captured hundreds of human children from colonies across the frontier over the past 5 years. And every one of those children received the same training I did. General Kim leaned forward. Are you saying there are more survivors? I'm saying there are more weapons. Maya manipulated the display to show locations throughout human space. 37 children escaped from various Vorthak facilities over the past 18 months. Each one brought detailed intelligence about enemy capabilities and intentions. Each one has been working to establish networks within human military and civilian infrastructure. Colonel Williams felt a chill run down her spine. Networks? We're not refugees, Colonel Williams. We're an advanced intelligence unit that the Vorthak accidentally created and then lost control of. Maya's expression was completely serious now, devoid of any pretense of childhood innocence. For the past 18 months, human children trained by alien weapons specialists have been quietly infiltrating Earth's military, industrial, and communication systems. That's impossible. We would have detected unauthorized access. Would you? We learned Vorthak computer protocols. We understand their encryption methods. We know how they think, how they plan, how they make decisions. Maya walked back to the front of the room. We've been preparing for this war longer than Earth's military has been aware it was coming. Admiral Morrison was studying his tablet with growing alarm. Miss Chen, are you telling us that this meeting was planned? This meeting was inevitable, Admiral Morrison. Earth's military leadership is competent but predictable. Once I demonstrated tactical knowledge beyond normal parameters, protocols demanded that I be brought before senior command for evaluation. Maya gestured toward the holographic display showing the Vorthak invasion plan. What happens next depends on whether you're willing to accept that the war you thought you were fighting doesn't exist. The Vorthak aren't invading human space. They're walking into a trap that's been 18 months in the making. General Kim stood up slowly. Miss Chen, what exactly are you proposing? 6 months after Maya Chen's briefing to Earth's military command, the first Vorthak scout ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Fleet Admiral Sarah Kim watched their approach from the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's newest and most advanced battleship, while trying to ignore the fact that her primary tactical advisor was a 16-year-old girl who spoke about alien genocide with the casual expertise of someone discussing lunch plans. Enemy formations are exactly as predicted. Maya reported from her position at the tactical console. She wore a specially designed uniform with no rank insignia, since Earth's military had no precedent for classifying someone who was simultaneously a minor, a war refugee, and the most effective strategic analyst in human space. Fleet Alpha is maintaining standard approach vectors. They're following the invasion plan we gave them down to the decimal point. Admiral Kim studied the tactical display showing 3 massive Vorthak fleets advancing on human positions. Each fleet contained over 1,000 ships, their hulls bristling with weapons that could reduce planets to radioactive slag. According to every strategic simulation, humanity should be preparing for extinction. Yet Maya sat calmly at her station, monitoring enemy movements like a chess master watching an opponent walk into a carefully prepared trap. "Signal from Fleet Command," reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson at the communication station. "All civilian evacuations are complete. The outer colonies are clear." Maya nodded with satisfaction. "Phase 1 complete. The Vorthak will find empty worlds waiting for them, exactly as planned." Admiral Kim still struggled with the surreal nature of their situation. When Maya and the other returned children had first proposed Operation Prometheus, the plan had seemed like elaborate fantasy. Evacuate 30 billion people from 47 worlds in less than 6 months? Coordinate the largest logistical operation in human history while maintaining complete communication security? Transform humanity's entire military doctrine based on intelligence gathered by traumatized teenagers? Now, watching the Vorthak fleets advance into what they believed was helpless human space, Admiral Kim was beginning to understand that Maya Chen and her fellow survivors had accomplished something unprecedented. They had weaponized their own suffering and turned 18 months of torture into the foundation of military victory. "Admiral, we're receiving transmission from the Vorthak flagship," Lieutenant Commander Jackson announced. "They're demanding our surrender." "Put it through," Admiral Kim ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of a Vorthak command ship. Fleet Commander HFY stood before the camera, his reptilian features arranged in what passed for a smile among his species. When he spoke, his voice carried the arrogant confidence of someone who had overseen the conquest of 17 civilizations without ever encountering meaningful resistance. "Human vessel, I am Fleet Commander HFY of the Vorthak hegemony. You will surrender immediately and prepare your populations for processing. Resistance will result in the complete sterilization of your worlds." Admiral Kim looked at Maya, who nodded almost imperceptibly, while her fingers continued working across her tactical console. "Fleet Commander HFY, this is Admiral Kim of the United Earth Space Force. We reject your demand for surrender." HFY's expression shifted to what might have been amusement. "Admiral Kim, your species lacks the technological capacity to resist our forces. We have conquered 17 species across this galaxy. Your primitive weapons cannot penetrate our defenses." "You're probably right about that," Admiral Kim admitted, following the script Maya had prepared. "Our technology is inferior to yours. Our ships are outnumbered 20 to 1. By every conventional metric, humanity should surrender immediately. Then why do you choose extinction over submission?" Admiral Kim smiled, and Maya felt a moment of pride watching her species leaders finally understand what she and the other children had known for 18 months. "Because Fleet Commander HFY, we're not going to fight you conventionally." The transmission ended and Admiral Kim turned to Maya. "Are you ready?" Maya's fingers moved across her tactical console with practiced efficiency, activating communication networks that connected human forces across dozens of star systems. All units are in position. Operation Prometheus is go for Phase 2. What happened next would be studied by military historians for centuries. The Vorthak fleet advanced toward Earth expecting to encounter massed human forces defending their homeworld. Instead, they found empty space. No defensive formations. No desperate last stands. No terrified civilians broadcasting pleas for mercy. Just silence and the growing realization that their enemy had vanished. "Where are they?" Fleet Commander HFY demanded from his flagship bridge, studying sensor readings that made no sense according to Vorthak intelligence. Sensors show minimal human fleet presence in the entire system. "This cannot be correct." His tactical officer consulted multiple displays with growing confusion. "Fleet Commander, human colonial worlds show no population centers. Our scouts report that the planets appear to have been evacuated. All infrastructure remains intact, but there are no life signs. Evacuated? 30 billion humans cannot simply disappear. Check your sensors again. Maya watched the Vorthak confusion with grim satisfaction. They're learning their first lesson about humans, Admiral Kim. We don't fight battles we can't win. We change the rules until we can win. Admiral Kim studied the tactical display showing Vorthak forces spreading throughout the Sol system, searching for an enemy that wasn't where they expected to find it. The aliens moved with the methodical efficiency of predators who had never encountered prey that refused to behave predictably. Signal the fleet. Begin Phase 3. Across human space, the real battle began, not in the large decisive engagements the Vorthak expected, but in thousands of small actions that struck at the heart of their operational capabilities. Human ships that had been hiding in asteroid fields and deep space emerged to attack Vorthak supply convoys with hit-and-run tactics. Mining stations that appeared abandoned suddenly activated massive explosive charges as enemy fleets passed nearby. Communication relays. That the Vorthak needed to coordinate their vast invasion. Force began failing in precisely timed sequences that created cascading system failures throughout their network. Fleet Commander. The tactical officer's voice carried a note of panic that HFY had never heard before. We're receiving distress signals from supply convoys in 17 different systems. Our logistics ships are under attack by small human forces using guerrilla tactics. Impossible. Our intelligence indicated that human forces were concentrated around their homeworld for a final defensive stand. Maya had been monitoring Vorthak communications since the battle began, listening to their confusion and growing desperation with the detached interest of a scientist, observing a laboratory experiment. Fleet Commander HFY is learning his second lesson about humans, she reported to Admiral Kim. We lie to our enemies. The Vorthak had spent months planning their invasion, based on intelligence that Maya and the other children had carefully crafted to be both believable and completely wrong. Human fleet positions, defensive strategies, industrial capabilities, population centers, psychological profiles of military leadership. Every piece of information had been designed to lead the Vorthak into making fatal tactical errors. Admiral Kim, Maya continued, her voice carrying the calm certainty of someone executing a plan that had been refined through months of careful preparation. The Vorthak are discovering that the humans they thought they understood don't exist. The invasion plan we gave them assumed they were fighting a species that would respond predictably to overwhelming force. Admiral Kim watched as reports flooded in from across human space. Vorthak supply lines were being systematically destroyed by forces that appeared from nowhere and vanished before effective countermeasures could be deployed. Communication networks that the aliens needed to coordinate their vast fleets were being disrupted by human technical specialists who understood Vorthak protocols better than most Vorthak did. Manufacturing facilities that produced replacement parts for their ships were being sabotaged by infiltrators who knew exactly which components were critical to Vorthak. Technology. Phase 4 is commencing ahead of schedule, Maya reported. The other children are implementing local tactical operations based on real-time intelligence, Admiral. Kim had initially been skeptical of Maya's claim that 37 human teenagers could coordinate military operations across dozens of star systems while maintaining perfect operational security. Now she was watching those same teenagers direct the most successful military campaign in human history using nothing but knowledge they had gained while being tortured by the enemy they were now systematically destroying. Fleet Commander HFY is requesting emergency reinforcements from the hegemony, Lieutenant Commander Jackson reported. He's claiming that human forces are using unknown technology and impossible tactics. Maya's laugh was soft and utterly without humor. Unknown technology. He still doesn't understand. Understand what? Admiral Kim asked. That we're not using unknown technology, Admiral Kim. We're using the technology they taught I. Fleet Commander HFY stood in the ruins of what had once been the most advanced command center in the Vorthak hegemony, watching his empire collapse in real time. The holographic displays around him showed a nightmare that no Vorthak strategist had ever conceived. Their 3,000-ship invasion force was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that refused to fight according to any known tactical doctrine. Report, he ordered. Though his voice carried none of the authority that had once commanded fleets across 17 conquered systems, His tactical officer, Sub-Commander Klextai, consulted multiple displays showing disaster after disaster. Fleet Commander, we have lost contact with 63% of our forward units. Supply lines are completely severed in 41 systems. Our communication networks are experiencing cascading failures that appear to be coordinated attacks. HFY studied the tactical display with growing incomprehension. According to every simulation, every strategic model, every piece of intelligence they had gathered, this invasion should have been concluded within weeks. Human resistance should have collapsed after the first decisive battle. Instead, the humans had simply vanished, leaving behind empty worlds and a war that made no sense. Sub-Commander, how many human ships have our forces destroyed? Klextai consulted his reports with obvious reluctance. Confirmed kills total approximately 200 vessels, Fleet Commander. 200. We brought 3,000 ships to conquer this species, and we've destroyed 200 of their vessels? HFY's voice rose to a roar that echoed through the command center. Where are their fleets? Where are their defensive positions? Where are the humans? Light years away, Maya Chen stood on the bridge of the captured Vorthak heavy cruiser Kethmore, watching her species answer that question in the most direct way possible. Through the viewport, she could see human engineering teams working to retrofit the alien ship with Earth technology, turning captured enemy vessels into weapons that would be used against their former owners. Status report, Maya requested from Commander Torres, the human officer who had been assigned to work with her on what Earth's military had designated the Ghost Fleet. Operation. We've successfully captured and converted 47 Vorthak vessels across 16 systems, Commander Torres reported. Each ship has been crewed by mixed human-AI teams using the technical specifications you provided. Estimated time to operational status is 72 hours. Maya nodded with satisfaction. Phase 5 of Operation Prometheus was proceeding exactly as planned. The Vorthak had expected to fight a conventional war against an inferior enemy. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that captured their own ships and turned them into weapons that knew all of their weaknesses. Commander Torres, what's the status on the infiltration protocols? Your people have successfully accessed Vorthak command networks in 31 systems. We're receiving real-time intelligence on their fleet movements, supply schedules, and tactical planning. It's like reading their operational manual while they're still writing it. Maya allowed herself a moment of grim amusement. The Vorthak had taught human children how to use their computer systems, assuming that such knowledge would be useful for maintenance work in labor camps. They had never imagined that those same children would use that knowledge to turn the Vorthak's own information networks against them. Her communication console chimed with an incoming transmission. Maya recognized the encryption signature immediately. It was from David Kim, one of the other survivors from the Kepler 442b facility, now operating from a captured Vorthak forward base in the Proxima Centauri system. Maya, this is David. Phase 6 is ready for implementation. We've identified the location of the Vorthak hegemony's central command structure. Maya studied the tactical data David had transmitted. Confirmed. The Hegemony Council is meeting an emergency session on their homeworld. They're trying to understand how their invasion is failing. Commander Torres looked up from his tactical displays. Miss Chen, are you seriously considering an attack on the Vorthak homeworld? That's 1,400 light-years away in the heart of their empire. Commander Torres, the Vorthak made a critical error in their strategic planning. They assumed that humans would fight defensively, trying to protect our territory. They never considered that we might take the war to them. Maya walked to the main tactical display and began manipulating the holographic controls. The Vorthak hegemony has never faced an enemy capable of striking at their core systems, while simultaneously defending their own space. Their entire military doctrine is based on offensive operations far from their homeworld. The display showed the location of the Vorthak home system, surrounded by defensive installations that had never been tested in actual combat. David and the other survivors have been infiltrating hegemony space for the past 3 months, gathering intelligence and establishing operational bases. The Vorthak don't know we're coming, because they can't imagine that a primitive species would be capable of such long-range strategic planning. Commander, Torres was studying the tactical projection with growing alarm. Miss Chen, you're talking about a deep strike mission into the most heavily defended system in Vorthak space. Even with captured ships and insider knowledge, the odds of success are astronomical. Maya turned to face the commander, and once again, he saw something in her eyes that made him understand why the Vorthak had made such a catastrophic mistake. "Commander Torres, what do you know about human military history?" "I'm familiar with the major conflicts." "Then you know that humans have a long tradition of undertaking operations that seem impossible to outside observers. We've crossed frozen rivers to attack superior forces. We've launched airborne assaults across entire oceans. We've landed on beaches defended by overwhelming firepower." Maya's voice carried absolute conviction. "We specialize in doing things that our enemies believe are impossible." Her communication console chimed again. This time, the transmission came from Admiral Kim aboard the Defiance. "Maya, this is Admiral Kim. We're receiving reports that the Vorthak are beginning to withdraw from human space. Their forward fleets are attempting to regroup in their core systems." Maya smiled with predatory satisfaction. "Perfect. They're doing exactly what we predicted they would do when faced with an enemy they don't understand. Maya, I have to ask, are you certain about Phase 6? Once we commit to this operation, there's no turning back." Maya looked around the bridge of the captured Vorthak ship, taking in the alien technology that had been turned against its creators by human children who had learned to think like their enemies while never forgetting who they truly were. "Admiral Kim, the Vorthak spent 18 months teaching us how to wage war against a species they considered inferior. They showed us their weapons, their tactics, their strategic doctrine, their technology. They explained their history, their psychology, their methods of conquest." Maya paused, remembering the faces of the other children who had shared those months of carefully planned suffering. What they never understood is that humans don't just learn from our experiences. "We improve upon them." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that the Vorthak created the perfect human weapons and then lost control of them. We've spent the past year using everything they taught us to plan their complete destruction." Maya's voice carried the absolute certainty of someone who had seen the future and found it acceptable.
"Phase 6 isn't just an attack on their homeworld?"
"Admiral Kim, it's the conclusion of the most comprehensive military education any human has ever received." Commander Torres was monitoring communications from across human space, watching as reports flooded in of Vorthak forces retreating from system after system. "Miss Chen, our forces are achieving victory objectives ahead of schedule across all fronts. The Vorthak invasion is collapsing." "The invasion was always going to collapse, Commander Torres. We designed it to fail." Maya turned back to the tactical display showing the route to the Vorthak homeworld. "But defeating their invasion isn't enough. The Vorthak will regroup, develop new strategies, try again with different tactics." She manipulated the display to show Vorthak territory throughout the galaxy. "They've conquered 17 species using the same methods for thousands of years. They've never encountered permanent defeat because they've never fought an enemy capable of learning from them." Maya looked directly at Commander Torres, and he saw something in her expression that made him understand why ancient humans had once hunted creatures 10 times their size, using nothing but intelligence and determination. The only way to ensure that the Vorthak never threaten another species is to demonstrate that their methods of conquest can be turned against them. Completely. Her communication console chimed one final time. The transmission came from all 36 other survivors simultaneously, scattered across human space in captured Vorthak vessels, each one ready to implement the final phase of a plan that had begun in the torture chambers of alien scientists who thought they understood human nature. Maya opened the channel and spoke the words that would end the Vorthak. Hegemony forever. "All units. This is Phoenix 1. Operation Prometheus Phase 6 is authorized. Target Vorthak homeworld. Time to demonstrate what humans do to enemies who threaten our children." The Vorthak homeworld of Kethvar had stood unconquered for 3,000 years, its orbital defenses and planetary shields protecting the heart of an empire that had crushed 17 civilizations. No enemy force had ever penetrated the outer system, much less threatened the planet where the Hegemony Council ruled over a quarter of the galaxy. Maya Chen stood on the bridge of the Kethmore, watching that 3,000-year streak come to an end. "All Ghost Fleet units are in position," reported David Kim from his captured dreadnought. 37 ships with mixed human-AI crews, all broadcasting authentic Vorthak identification codes. Maya studied the tactical display showing Kethvar's defenses, orbital platforms bristling with weapons that could vaporize entire fleets, energy shields that could deflect planet-killing asteroids, Automated defense networks that had been tested against every known form of attack in Vorthak military doctrine, none of which had been designed to defend against the Vorthak's own ships. Commence Phase 6 Alpha, Maya ordered. All units begin approach using standard hegemony fleet protocols. The Ghost Fleet moved toward Kethvar in perfect formation, their captured ships broadcasting the identification codes of vessels that the Vorthak defense network expected to see returning from the conquest of human space. Maya watched the tactical display as one by one. The outer defensive platforms acknowledged their passage and cleared them for approach to the planet. Maya, this is insane, whispered Sarah Martinez from her position aboard the converted science vessel Thexni. We're flying captured enemy ships into the most heavily defended system in the galaxy, crewed by humans who learned how to operate them from instruction manuals written in languages we couldn't even read 2 years ago. Maya's smile was sharp with predatory satisfaction. Sarah, the Vorthak spent 18 months teaching us to think like them. Now they're about to discover what happens when humans think like Vorthak, but fight like humans. On the surface of Kethvar, Hegemony Counselor Veltar stood in the emergency session chamber, trying to understand reports that made no sense according to any military doctrine in Vorthak history. The human conquest should have been concluded months ago. Instead, their invasion force was in full retreat, their ships captured and turned against them, their communication networks compromised by an enemy that seemed to know their protocols better than they did. Counselor Veltar, announced the chamber's tactical officer, our returning fleets are requesting permission to dock at the orbital shipyards. Fleet Commander Thexvi reports that human resistance was more significant than anticipated. Veltar studied the tactical display showing the approaching ships. How many vessels did we lose in the conquest? According to preliminary reports, approximately 15% of our invasion force, Counselor. However, Fleet Commander Thexvi indicates that human space has been successfully pacified. Maya listened to the Vorthak communications with grim amusement. David, are you monitoring their traffic? Every word, Maya. They think we're their returning conquest fleet. The orbital defenses are powering down to allow us to dock. Maya manipulated her tactical console, coordinating the movements of 37 captured warships crewed by human teenagers who had learned alien technology through methods that would haunt their dreams for the rest of their lives. All units prepare for Phase 6 Beta. Target the orbital defense platforms first, then the planetary shields. Maya. David's voice carried a note of concern. Once we begin the attack, there's no going back. We'll be committing an act of war against the entire Vorthak hegemony. Maya paused, considering David's words. She thought about the 43 children who had been taken from Kepler 442b, about the screams she still heard in quiet moments, about the faces of aliens who had experimented on human children because they considered it scientifically interesting. She thought about the 17 species that had been conquered by the Vorthak. Entire civilizations reduced to footnotes in alien conquest records. David. The Vorthak declared war on humanity when they decided our children were acceptable test subjects. Maya replied. We're just finishing what they started. She opened a channel to all Ghost Fleet units. All ships, this is Phoenix 1. Remember what they did to us. Remember what they did to our friends. Remember that they called it science. Maya's hand hovered over the firing control. Remember that they thought we were weak. She pressed the control. The Ghost Fleet opened fire simultaneously. 37 captured Vorthak warships unleashing their full firepower against the orbital defenses of the hegemony homeworld. Energy beams designed to crack planets struck defensive platforms that had never been attacked by their own technology. Missiles that could devastate entire fleets slammed into shields that had been calibrated to deflect external threats, not weapons firing from within their own perimeter. The orbital defenses of Kethvar, impregnable for 3 millennia, collapsed in less than 10 minutes. On the planet's surface, Counselor Veltar watched his tactical displays with growing horror as the returning fleet systematically destroyed everything that protected the hegemony's capital world. What are they doing? Why are our own ships attacking our defenses? His tactical officer was frantically trying to establish communication with the attacking vessels. Counselor, we're receiving a transmission from the lead ship. They're requesting to speak with the Hegemony Council. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the Kethmore. But instead of Fleet Commander Thexvi, a young human female stood before the camera. She wore a modified Vorthak uniform with no rank insignia, and her dark eyes held something that made Veltar's blood freeze in his veins. Hegemony Counselor Veltar.
I am Maya Chen, formerly prisoner designation.
7743B of Vorthak Research Facility. Keth 447, you may remember me from the experiments your scientists conducted on human children. Veltar stared at the image, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. Impossible. You are a primitive species. You lack the technology to reach our homeworld. Maya's smile was gentle and absolutely terrifying. Counselor Veltar, we're using your technology. Your ships, your weapons, your navigation systems, your identification codes. Everything we needed to destroy you was provided by your own people during our imprisonment. What do you want? We want you to understand something, Counselor Veltar. When you capture human children and torture them for scientific purposes, you need to be very careful about what you teach them. Maya gestured, and the camera angle widened to show the bridge of the Kethmore. Every station was crewed by human teenagers, all of them working with the casual competence of people who had learned alien technology under circumstances that would have broken members of any other species. You taught us how to operate your ships. You taught us your tactical doctrines. You taught us your communication protocols. You taught us your strategic planning methods. Maya's voice remained conversational, as if discussing academic subjects rather than the systematic destruction of an interstellar empire. You taught us everything we needed to know to wage war against the Vorthak hegemony using methods the Vorthak hegemony had never encountered. Before Counselor Veltar was beginning to understand the magnitude of the disaster that had befallen his species. What have you done to our invasion force? Your invasion force no longer exists, Counselor Veltar. It has been converted into a human fleet, crewed by the children you tortured. Every ship you sent to conquer humanity is now being used to dismantle your empire system by system. Maya manipulated a control on her console, and the tactical display showed Vorthak territory throughout the galaxy. Red indicators marked dozens of systems where hegemony forces were under attack by ships they recognized as their own. 43 children from one human colony, Counselor Veltar. That's all it took to bring down an empire that had conquered 17 species across 3,000 years. Veltar stared at the tactical display, watching his civilization collapse in real time. This is impossible. No species has ever resisted our conquest methods. No species had ever been human before, Maya replied simply. Counselor Veltar, I want you to send a message to every Vorthak facility in the galaxy. Tell them that humanity has graduated from your educational program. Tell them that the children you tried to break are coming home, and they're bringing everything you taught them. Maya leaned forward, and for a moment, Veltar saw exactly what the Vorthak had accidentally created in their arrogance. Tell them that the next time your species considers capturing human children for scientific experiments, they should remember what happened to the last group of Vorthak who thought that was a good idea. The transmission ended, leaving Counselor Veltar staring at a blank screen while around him. The Hegemony Council chamber erupted in panic as reports flooded in of Vorthak systems falling to human forces across the galaxy. Maya Chen stood on the bridge of the captured Vorthak flagship, watching the planet that had served as the capital of a galactic empire prepare to surrender to a fleet of human teenagers who had learned the art of war from their enemies and perfected it through 18 months of carefully focused hatred.